Hello there, and welcome to Science for Sleep, the quiet little corner where we let curiosity stretch its legs without hurrying anywhere. Tonight, I want to invite you into one of the most unsettling, most beautiful questions human beings have ever asked. A question that sounds simple at first, but quickly turns slippery. What does it mean to say there was nothing before the universe began? Not an empty room, not the black of space, not even silence, but a nothing that had no space, no time, no before, no after. And yet, out of that strange nothing came everything. Stars, galaxies, oceans, trees, our own thoughts. How can that be? How can nothing suddenly erupt into everything? Before we set sail on this slow journey, I want to ask something grounding, something small. Where are you listening from tonight? Are you lying in a quiet room, perhaps under the soft weight of a blanket? Or are you somewhere a little noisier, trying to carve out a gentle moment of stillness in the middle of it all? And while you hold that thought, let me add one more, to set the tone for tonight's story. When you think about nothing, what comes to mind? Do you picture a blank white space, or pure darkness, or perhaps something you can't quite picture at all? It's a very personal thing, the way we each imagine nothingness. And tonight, we'll explore that mystery together, slowly, calmly, like drifting across an endless ocean under starlight. If you find this kind of gentle exploration comforting, if you like how these cosmic questions can feel like bedtime stories for grown-up wonder, it would mean a lot if you gave this video a like, or maybe even subscribed. It helps this little space find others who might be searching for a quiet way to wonder too. Now let's begin. Imagine you are handed a small box. It looks ordinary enough, a wooden cube, smooth to the touch. The person giving it to you whispers, "Inside this box is nothing." At first you laugh. Surely, they mean it is empty. But an empty box still contains something. Air molecules, perhaps a faint scent of wood, maybe even dust. So you ask, "Do you mean absolutely nothing?" They nod. Yes, nothing at all. Not air, not particles, not energy, no space, no time, nothing. Now the mind hesitates. How can such a thing be? A box without space inside is not really a box. A container of nothing is no container at all. And yet, imagine holding it. The weight presses against your palms. The wood feels solid and real. The promise of nothing within makes it heavier, stranger, more mysterious. This thought experiment is not about physics, but about the limits of imagination. Already you see the difficulty. To think of nothing is to think of something. Even when we try to subtract, the act of imagining gives it shape. Consider this. When you close your eyes and think of absolute nothing, what do you see? Perhaps a blackness. But blackness is still a presence. Perhaps a blank void. But that too has form. The very act of imagining introduces qualities. Emptiness, silence, darkness. None of these are true nothing. This puzzle has haunted philosophers for millennia. Parmenides, a thinker in ancient Greece, declared boldly, "Nothing cannot be." To him, non-being was an impossibility. Only being exists. The idea of nothing was an illusion of thought. Centuries later, Aristotle agreed. He argued that a vacuum, a true nothingness, could not exist, for nature abhors a vacuum. The universe, he believed, was eternal, without beginning or end. Something always was. And yet, millennia after these philosophers, modern physics suggested otherwise. For in the 20th century, the discovery of cosmic expansion hinted at a beginning, a moment when all space and time emerged together. A beginning not out of something, but seemingly out of nothing. So we circle back to our box. If it truly held nothing, could it one day burst open and release a universe? Could galaxies spill forth from its emptiness? Stars ignite from its silence? Life blossom from its absence? This is the paradox of the Big Bang. It challenges not just our science, but our sense of logic itself. How can nothing give birth to everything? Imagine yourself alone upon a boat. Not a modern boat, with humming engines or bright electric lights, but something simpler. A vessel carved from wood, its hull creaking gently. A single sail, pale and tattered, rising above you. The air smells faintly of salt and rope, and yet there is no water. Your boat does not float upon a sea of waves, but instead rests on a surface that cannot be named. There is no spray of foam, no rolling tide, no gulls above. When you lean over the edge to peer downward, you see nothing. Not blackness, not blue, not depth, only an absence, a kind of invisible quiet that does not even allow itself to be seen. Here, on this strange voyage, you are asked to navigate the impossible, the ocean of nothingness. The sailor's first realization, direction without horizon. At first, you do what any sailor would do. You scan the horizon, but there is none. There is no east or west, no north or south, for directions require reference points. There is no rising sun, no pole star to guide you. It is here you realize the first paradox of nothingness, even the idea of where collapses. A sailor without horizon cannot say where he is going, nor even if he is moving at all. Without space, the very language of location dissolves, and so you sit upon the deck, the wood beneath you solid, the sail above you silent, the horizon forever absent. You ask yourself, if there is no space, where am I? The question hangs unanswered, like a lantern with no flame. The sailor's second realization, time without ticking. You wait, or at least, you think you wait. But what does waiting mean in a place without clocks? Your heartbeat still pounds faintly in your chest, a reminder of rhythm. But outside of you, there's nothing to measure its beat against. No sun rises, no shadow shifts, no seasons change. And so you realize the second paradox of nothingness. Without time, there can be no before and after. To wait is to assume time passes. But here, there is no passage, no duration, just an eternal stillness. And yet, your mind insists, I must have been here for some time already. But then you wonder, has it been a second, a year, or perhaps it has been no time at all? Without a clock, the thought itself collapses. The sailor's third realization, motion without change. Out of curiosity, you lift the oar and push against the surface of this invisible sea. The boat does not move, or perhaps it does. You cannot tell. Movement requires background, a shift of scenery, the sliding of one object relative to another. But here in nothingness, there is no frame of reference. To row is meaningless. You may as well be still. And here comes the third paradox of nothingness. Motion requires change, and change requires difference. In a reality of pure sameness, of pure absence, motion itself is an illusion. The meditation of emptiness. Now close your eyes. Imagine yourself there, upon that wooden boat, drifting on the formless sea. Do you feel the unease in your chest? The subtle panic of trying to orient yourself, where there is no up or down, no past or future. This is why nothing unsettles us. We are creatures of context. Our minds are tuned to patterns. The ticking of clocks, the shifting of shadows, the pull of gravity beneath our feet. Strip these away, and the mind gasps like a diver pulled too deep, searching for air that does not exist. And yet, there's also a calm here. For in nothingness, there is no storm, no loss, no sorrow, no striving. Nothing can be taken from you because nothing exists to be lost. It is both terrifying and soothing, a paradoxical cradle of silence, the birth of something. And then imagine this. In the midst of this impossible stillness, something stirs. Perhaps it is a ripple on the surface, though there is no water. Perhaps it is a spark in the air, though there is no sky. Perhaps it is a vibration, though there is no medium to carry sound. Out of the absolute absence, a difference appears, a tremor of being. What would that moment feel like? For billions of years, though years do not yet exist, there has been nothing. No event, no change, no presence. And then, without warning, a single moment of somethingness emerges. Would it be violent, a shattering, or would it be gentle, a whisper of becoming? The physicist might say, a fluctuation, a quantum tremor. The theologian might say, creation, the breath of God. The philosopher might whisper, perhaps being itself cannot help but be. But for the sailor on his wooden deck, it would be overwhelming. Suddenly, a horizon appears. Suddenly, a breeze stirs the sail. Suddenly, the ocean is no longer nothing, but water, dark, heaving, alive. Stars spill across the sky like jewels. The silence shatters into waves and winds. From nothing, something. The voyage is begun. The question that remains. But here we must pause. For this thought experiment, soothing as it is, carries a hidden danger. By imagining a sailor on a boat, we already cheat. We already place something inside the nothing. A boat, a sail, a horizon. Even the word ocean betrays us, for oceans are not nothing. They are something vast, yes, but something nonetheless. And so the riddle deepens. We cannot think of nothing without smuggling something into it. Our language, our metaphors, our very imagination are made for something. When faced with nothing, they collapse. Perhaps that is the real secret of the Big Bang. Not that something came from nothing, but that our words cannot touch what truly was, or was not before. Ancient whispers of nothing. Across cultures, this paradox has haunted the human mind. In ancient India, the Vedas spoke of a time before creation, when there was neither existence nor non-existence. A state beyond even nothing. In China, Taoist philosophers spoke of the Tao, the nameless source that gives rise to being and non-being alike, the fertile emptiness from which all flows. And in Greece, Parmenides denied nothing altogether, while Democritus imagined a void as the necessary background against which atoms moved. Different languages, different metaphors, but all circling the same mystery. How could being emerge if before there was none? Your own ocean. And so we return to you. Close your eyes tonight and imagine again that sailor drifting across the formless sea. Let yourself float in that silence. Do not resist the unease. Do not hurry toward answers. Let the question itself carry you. What is nothing? Perhaps, as you drift, you will realize that nothing is not a thing to be known, but a space to be felt, a silence to be listened to, a paradox to be carried gently, like a lantern that lights without flame. And somewhere, deep within that silence, perhaps you will sense the whisper of creation. Not an explosion, not a roar, but a quiet stirring. A reminder that even from the emptiest ocean, something might one day rise. Imagine, once more, that vast ocean of nothingness. For what felt like eternity, there was only silence. No stars, no time, no place. Only the immeasurable stillness of absence. And yet, at some unfathomable moment, something trembled at its edge. A boundary appeared, not a wall, not a line, but a fragile shift, as if silence itself leaned ever so slightly toward sound, as if stillness itself bent toward motion. This was not yet the universe we know. There were no galaxies, no swirling stars, no planets drifting in their orbits. There was only the most delicate difference, a fragile edge where nothing began to soften into something. The thought experiment of the first flicker. Close your eyes. Imagine staring into a candle flame. The light flickers, soft and warm. Now imagine blowing it out. Smoke curls into the air, and darkness returns. But before the flame ignites, before the smoke even exists, there is a single, almost imperceptible moment. A spark. a transition between absence and presence. Could the birth of the universe have been like that? A flicker so faint, so fragile, that it was less an event and more a possibility? Not yet matter, not yet light, just a threshold, a trembling edge where non-being tilts toward being. The fragility of beginnings. Every beginning feels fragile. Think of a newborn child, held for the first time. So delicate, so dependent, so astonishingly unlikely. A slight shift of circumstance, and the child might not have been. Think of the first leaf budding in spring. A thin green sliver pushing through cold soil, vulnerable to frost, to hunger, to chance. Or think of a thought itself. One spark in the mind, rising from nowhere, fragile as mist. Speak it aloud, and it becomes real. Ignore it, and it vanishes forever. So too, perhaps, with the universe. At its beginning, it was not an unstoppable force, but a fragile flicker. A possibility, trembling on the knife's edge between being and non-being. The mathematician's edge, 0 and 1. Mathematics offers us a simple but profound metaphor. Between 0 and 1 lies an infinite edge. 0 represents nothing, absence, the void. 1 represents presence, being, existence. And yet, the leap between them is immense. To move from nothing to something, from 0 to 1, is to create a universe. Think of it. A blank page holds infinite possibility, but until ink touches it, there is nothing to read. A silent piano holds countless songs, but until a finger strikes a key, no melody exists. In the same way, the transition from 0 to 1 may be the most mysterious passage in all of existence. What bridges that gap? What allows nothing to lean into something? Physics offers terms like quantum fluctuation or vacuum instability. Philosophy whispers of potential, of being as necessity. Theology invokes creation, a divine word. But beneath them all lies the same fragile edge, the cosmic breath. Some traditions imagine creation as breath. In the Hebrew Bible, God breathes life into dust. In Indian philosophy, the cosmos is exhaled and inhaled in endless cycles by Brahman. In Taoist thought, the Tao breathes out the 10,000 things and breathes them back in. Breath itself is a fragile thing. A pause too long, and life falters. Yet it is also enduring, rhythmic, eternal in its return. What if the Big Bang was not a violent eruption, but a kind of breath? A gentle exhalation of being from the still lungs of nothingness? A whisper that spread and spread until it filled the silence with stars? The edge is mirror. Consider another thought experiment. Imagine standing at the edge of a great cliff, looking down into a fog-filled abyss. The edge beneath your feet is solid, but the abyss before you is unknowable. Now imagine that abyss is not below, but everywhere, surrounding you, beneath, above, within. Nothingness stretches infinitely, and you stand at its fragile boundary, a single presence surrounded by absence. This is what it might mean to be something in a sea of nothing. Existence is a fragile cliff against the endless fog. But here's the paradox. The edge itself is not separate from nothing. It touches it. It arises from it. Without the abyss, there could be no edge. The fragility of something is inseparable from the silence of nothing. Perhaps the Big Bang was such an edge, a fragile emergence, a boundary between non-being and being, a mirror where the two touched and gave birth to the first spark. The philosopher's question. Philosophers often ask, why is there something rather than nothing? It is perhaps the most haunting question of all. Why this fragile edge, this precarious universe of matter and light, instead of eternal silence? Some argue it had to be, that nothingness is unstable, destined to give rise to something, just as silence invites a sound, or a still pond invites a ripple. Others argue the opposite, that something is the exception, the accident, the improbable miracle floating in an infinite ocean of non-being. And still others wonder, Maybe nothing was never possible at all. Maybe existence is the ground state, and the very idea of nothing is an illusion, a trick of thought. Each answer leads only to more questions. But perhaps that is the point. The fragile edge cannot be solved like a puzzle. It can only be contemplated, lived with, carried in quiet awe. The fragility within us. Look at yourself. You too are a fragile edge of something. You were once, not yet. A cluster of possibilities, a fragile flicker, and then somehow you became. Your body, your breath, your thoughts, all resting on that same mysterious threshold between non-being and being. And one day, you will return to that edge. Life will lean back into silence, being into absence. Death is not so different from birth in this way. It is another fragile crossing. Perhaps the Big Bang, too, was such a crossing. Not a singular event long ago, but a pattern that lives on in every fragile beginning. The first heartbeat, the first word, the first spark of a star, sailing from nothing to something. So let us return to our sailor. He has drifted for eternity across the ocean of nothing. No stars, no horizon, no time. And then, suddenly, he sees it. A glimmer, a trembling edge, a fragile shift in the silence. At first, he doubts his eyes. Was it a trick of thought? A dream in the endless void? But then it grows. The horizon forms. Light spreads. The boat rocks gently on newborn waves. The ocean is no longer absence, but water. The sky no longer void, but space. The sailor has crossed the fragile edge of something. And so have we. We live on this side of the edge now, surrounded by galaxies and stars, walking on solid earth, breathing air that once was not. But in the quiet moments, when we close our eyes, perhaps we still feel it. That thin, delicate boundary behind us, the fragile threshold where nothing leaned into something, and being began. For centuries, philosophers wrestled with the idea of nothingness. They argued, doubted, and dreamed about it. But in the last century, physics itself began to whisper new answers. And those answers were stranger than anyone expected. Because physics, when it looked deeply into the heart of matter, discovered something astonishing. Nothing is not really nothing. The empty room that isn't empty. Let us begin with a simple thought experiment. Imagine an empty room. You strip it bare. No furniture, no windows, no floorboards creaking beneath your feet. You vacuum away the dust, chase out every last molecule of air. You seal the walls so no light, no sound, no particles can enter. You stand in the doorway and whisper, "Now it is empty." But physics says otherwise. That empty room is still alive with energy. Tiny particles flicker in and out of existence, appearing and vanishing in flashes too brief to see. The floor itself hums with vibrations. Even the dark, silent airless space between the walls is buzzing with unseen activity. This is what we call the quantum vacuum. Not a true emptiness, but a restless sea of fluctuations. A nothing that seethes with potential. The whisper of uncertainty. Why does this happen? Here enters one of the strangest truths in physics, the uncertainty principle. At the smallest scales, the universe refuses to sit still. You cannot know both where a particle is and how fast it is moving with perfect precision. If you pin down one, the other wriggles free. And the same applies to energy itself. For the tiniest moments of time, energy can flicker into existence, so long as it disappears quickly enough, like a loan from the bank of reality, borrowed and repaid before anyone notices. So even in what we call nothing, these fluctuations bubble. Pairs of particles arise, live for a heartbeat, and then vanish again. This is not imagination. It is measurable, testable, part of the very structure of the universe. And so, nothingness is not a barren desert. It is a restless ocean. The void is creative force. If this is true, then perhaps nothing is not the opposite of being, but its soil, the ground from which presence can sprout. Think of a field in winter. At first it looks barren, lifeless, silent, but beneath the surface, seeds stir. Roots dream of the spring. Life is hidden, not absent. The quantum vacuum is much the same. Beneath its still face lies a fertility we are only beginning to glimpse. Some physicists even suggest that the entire universe, the galaxies, the stars, the earth beneath your feet, may have arisen from such a fluctuation, that from the trembling of nothingness, everything bloomed. The cosmic lottery. But here is where the mind falters. If fluctuations are always happening, why did only one lead to a universe like ours? Why this cosmos, with its stars and rivers, its atoms and thoughts? Why not another? Why not none at all? This question is like asking why a particular wave crested higher than the rest in an endless ocean. Perhaps there are countless universes, born and gone in the blink of an eye, and ours is only one. Perhaps reality itself is an infinite lottery, and we are the winning ticket, the fluctuation that lasted. Or perhaps it was inevitable. Perhaps the laws of physics themselves guarantee that being will always emerge, sooner or later, from apparent nothingness. The answer is hidden still. But the very fact that we can ask the question, that physics can even suggest such possibilities, is itself astonishing. A thought experiment, listening to the vacuum. Close your eyes again. Imagine you are back in that empty room. No air, no light, no sound. Only bare walls and silence. Now, instead of listening with your ears, imagine listening with a deeper sense, with the mind's ear, tuned to the trembling of the quantum world. You begin to hear it. Tiny crackles, soft whispers, sudden sparks. The vacuum is not quiet at all. It hums like an orchestra tuning before the music begins. What if the Big Bang was simply the first note, the moment the orchestra began to play? The paradox of modern physics. And yet, here is the paradox. Physicists call this activity of the vacuum nothing. They say, the universe may have arisen from nothing. But when philosophers hear this, they protest. This is not nothing. A quantum vacuum, with laws and fluctuations and potential, is already something. True nothing, the absence of space, time, energy, law, being, remains untouched. So the riddle is not solved. It is only deepened. Science has shown us that what we once thought of as emptiness is far from empty. But whether this means that the true nothingness can give birth to something that remains beyond even physics, the fragility of knowing, perhaps this is where we must pause. For what is more fragile than our knowledge of beginnings? Each answer we find, whether philosophical or scientific, seems to dissolve into new questions. We dig into nothingness, only to find more something. We strip away the layers of being, only to discover more mysteries waiting beneath. And yet, maybe this is the point. To know nothing fully may be impossible, but to contemplate it is to brush against the edge of wonder, to feel, if only faintly, the fragile boundary where thought itself falls silent. The sailor returns. Let us return once more to our sailor, drifting across his impossible ocean. For endless ages, the sea seemed still, silent, empty. But now, with new eyes, he notices ripples, tiny flickers of light on the horizon. Not yet stars, not yet waves, just trembling hints. And he realizes the ocean of nothing is never still. It hums with possibility. Perhaps, he thinks, this was how it began. A fluctuation, a shimmer, a whisper in the silence that grew and grew until the sky was filled with galaxies and suns. He grips the rail of his boat, marveling. The voyage, it seems, was never across a barren void at all. The sea itself was always alive, waiting to bloom. Long before telescopes peered into galaxies, before equations hinted at quantum vacuums, human beings sat in silence and asked the same haunting question we asked tonight. What is nothing? The answers, across cultures, were as varied as the landscapes they lived in. Some denied it outright. Others embraced it as sacred. Some feared it, while others saw it as the source of wisdom. Let us drift among them, like travelers wandering through time, listening to their whispers. The Greek denial. In ancient Greece, around the 5th century BCE, a philosopher named Parmenides declared something radical. Nothing cannot be. To him, non-being was impossible. Only being exists. If you speak of nothing, you are already speaking falsely, because even to name it is to give it a kind of existence. Imagine telling Parmenides about the Big Bang, that everything came from nothing. He would shake his head. Impossible, he would say. Being comes only from being. Something cannot arise from nothing, because nothing is not even there to give rise. For him, the void was a trick of language, a ghost conjured by words. Centuries later, Aristotle would echo this. He argued that a vacuum, a space of pure nothing, could not exist. Nature abhors a vacuum, he insisted. In his view, there was always something, matter, form, substance, stretching back without beginning, forward without end. To the Greeks, then, nothing was not a possibility, but an illusion, the atomist's void. And yet not all agreed. The atomists, Leucippus and Democritus, proposed another vision. They imagined a world made of indivisible particles, atoms, moving in the void. For them, the void was not an illusion, but a necessary backdrop. Without it, motion would be impossible. Here lies a paradox. The void, they said, is real, but not as nothing. It is the stage on which something plays its dance, a container of absence, necessary for presence. This vision was closer to what modern physics would later discover, an emptiness that is never truly empty, the Indian silence. Meanwhile, in ancient India, the Rig Veda, one of the world's oldest sacred texts, offered a different meditation. In the beginning, there was neither existence nor non-existence. There was neither the realm of space nor the sky, which is beyond. This is a deeper kind of nothing, not just the absence of being, but the absence of non-being too. A silence so profound that even nothing does not apply. In Indian philosophy, this paradox deepened into the concept of sunyata, often translated as emptiness. In Buddhism, sunyata does not mean a barren void, but the absence of fixed essence. All things are empty, not because they are nothing, but because they are interconnected, without permanent selfhood. Nothingness here is not terrifying. It is liberating. To realize emptiness is to see the world as fluid, interdependent, impermanent. Imagine breathing into this thought, that to be empty is not to be lacking, but to be free. The Chinese Tao. In China, Taoist philosophers offered another vision still. The Tao Te Ching, attributed to Laozi, whispers, 30 spokes share the wheel's hub. It is the whole that makes it useful. Shape clay into a vessel. It is the emptiness within that makes it useful. Here, nothing is not absence but potential. The hollow of the cup allows it to hold water. The space of the room allows it to be lived in. The pause between notes gives music its rhythm. The Tao itself was described as a fertile emptiness, the nameless source from which the 10,000 things arise. Not a void to be feared, but a wellspring, quiet and inexhaustible. To the Taoist, to align with this emptiness is to live in harmony. To resist it is to struggle in vain. The Hebrew and Christian silence. Elsewhere in the Hebrew tradition, creation was described differently. In Genesis, the world begins with a divine act. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But was this creation from nothing? The Latin phrase creatio ex nihilo, creation out of nothing, emerged later as theologians wrestled with the idea. If God is eternal, then perhaps the universe had no material cause. God's will itself was enough. Here, nothing is not an ocean or a void. but a stage waiting for a word. Let there be light. And light was. To some, this is comforting. Nothing is not chaotic or restless, but ordered, held in the hand of the divine. The Islamic philosophers. In Islamic philosophy, thinkers such as Al-Farabi and Avicenna contemplated the necessary being, God, as the ground of all existence. For them, nothingness could not explain creation. Only a source that must exist, a being whose essence was existence itself, could explain why there is something rather than nothing. Here, nothingness is not fertile or creative. It is only the shadow cast by being, the modern echo. Across centuries, across continents, one pattern emerges. Every culture touched the edge of nothingness and gave it a different face. To the Greeks, it was illusion. To the Atomists, it was the backdrop of atoms. To the Indians, it was liberation. To the Chinese, it was fertility. To the Hebrews and Christians, it was a stage awaiting the word. To the Muslims, it was the shadow of the necessary being. Different names, different metaphors, but all circling the same riddle. A thought experiment, meeting the philosophers. Imagine a long wooden table, stretching endlessly into silence. Around it sit the world's philosophers. Parmenides shakes his head. Nothing cannot be. Democritus leans forward, but the void is real. A Taoist smiles gently. It is the emptiness that makes the vessel useful. A Buddhist monk whispers, emptiness is freedom. A Christian theologian declares, God created from nothing. Avicenna replies, no, God is necessary, and nothing is nothing at all. And you sit among them, listening. The table is endless, the debate eternal. Each voice circles the riddle, and none silences the others. What then is nothing? Perhaps the answer is not one voice, but the chorus, the harmony of disagreement itself, the sailor's reflection. And now, back on the deck of the sailor's boat, drifting across the impossible ocean, he closes his eyes and hears them, the voices of the philosophers, carried like echoes across the waves. Each voice offers an answer, each one different, and yet, each answer is like a lantern flickering on the horizon. The sailor realizes, to contemplate nothing is not to find one truth, but to join a tradition stretching back thousands of years. To ask this question is to sail among philosophers, mystics, scientists, poets, all searching the same silent ocean, the ocean of nothingness, the philosopher's void. We often imagine it as a river, flowing endlessly forward. You are standing on its banks, watching moments drift past like leaves. Behind you, the river stretches back into the distance, childhood, history, the age of dinosaurs, the birth of stars. Ahead, it disappears into the unknown future. But now imagine sailing upstream. You go past the birth of humanity, past the first animals, past the molten earth, glowing like an ember, past the clouds of gas that formed our sun, past the first galaxies, swirling into shape. Keep going, faster and faster, until the river narrows, until the stars vanish, until there is only darkness. You reach the beginning, the source, the Big Bang, and then the river ends. There is no bank, no current, no before. Only silence, the paradox of before. Our language betrays us here. To ask, what happened before the Big Bang, is to smuggle in the very thing that may not have existed yet, time. It is like asking, what is north of the North Pole? The question feels natural, but collapses on itself. Time may not stretch backward forever. Instead, it may have been born with the Big Bang itself. If so, then the universe did not emerge in time. Time emerged with the universe. A thought experiment, the book without pages. Imagine holding a book. You open it to the first page. The story begins, in the beginning. Now ask, what happened on the page before this one? But there is no page before page one. The story begins where it begins. There's no hidden chapter, no missing sheet. The before is simply not part of the book. The Big Bang may be like this. Page 1 of the universe. Asking what happened before is like asking for the page that was never printed. Hawking's boundary. The physicist Stephen Hawking once used a powerful image. He said that asking what happened before the Big Bang is like asking what is south of the South Pole. There's no south of south. Similarly, there may be no before the beginning. Time itself could be finite, but without edge, like the curved surface of the Earth. You can keep walking east forever, but you never fall off an edge of east. In Hawking's view, the universe may be self-contained. No beginning, no before, just the unfolding of space and time together. But the mind resists, and yet we struggle. Our minds recoil at the idea of no before. We are creatures of sequence, cause and effect. Every event in our lives has a yesterday. Every flame has a spark. Every child has parents. So when we hear that the universe has no before, something in us whispers, impossible. There must have been something. This tension between what the mind demands and what the cosmos suggests is where philosophy blooms. A different kind of silence. Perhaps we should not imagine the pre-Big Bang as a place or a time, but as silence. Think of a symphony. Before the first note, there's a hush in the concert hall. It is not part of the music, and yet it allows the music to begin. Without it, the sound would not feel like a beginning. Or think of dawn. The sky before sunrise is not day and not night. It is a threshold, a silence where something stirs, unseen. Could the before of the universe be such a silence? Not a time, not a place, but a threshold? A thought experiment, the sleeper's dream. Imagine falling asleep. You dream of a vast, luminous world. Mountains, oceans, stars. Entire civilizations. You live lifetimes inside this dream. And then you awaken. You wonder, what was before the dream began? But there was no dream before the dream. It simply began, unfolding within sleep. The before belongs to another order, waking reality, not dream time. Perhaps our universe is like that dream. The Big Bang was the moment the dream began, and whatever lies outside belongs to something of a different order, something we cannot reach from within. Cosmic humility. The silence before time humbles us. It reminds us that our categories, before, after, cause, effect, may not stretch to the very edges of reality. Perhaps the question, what was before the Big Bang, is not one to be answered, but to be sat with. Like a koan in Zen Buddhism. What is the sound of one hand clapping? Such questions are not meant to resolve, but to open, to stretch the mind past its boundaries. And so, when we gaze into that silence before time, perhaps we should not ask for an answer, but simply breathe into the wonder. The sailor's pause. The sailor, still adrift on his infinite ocean, closes his eyes. He tries to imagine what lies beyond the horizon, before the first wave. But there's nothing to picture. Not even a dark sea. Not even stillness. Only the silence of no before. He feels fear, yes, but also release. The river of time does not stretch endlessly back. It simply begins. And he is here, carried on its current. In the silence before time, he feels not loss, but belonging. Imagine sitting in a silent room. The lights are dim, the air still. At first, it feels quiet, perfectly quiet. But as the seconds stretch out, you begin to notice that silence isn't as empty as you thought. There's the faint beating of your heart, the soft rhythm of your breath, the almost imperceptible ringing in your ears that only emerges when everything else goes still. What seemed like silence is not silence at all. It is filled with subtle movement, with vibrations so small they hide beneath notice, until you turn your attention to them. This is the paradox we face when we try to imagine nothing. Our minds conjure a blank canvas, a void, an absolute absence. And yet, the more closely we attend to this imagined void, the more we realize how quickly it fills with something, with mental echoes, with imagined darkness, with a sense of space itself. The attempt to picture nothing becomes the creation of something. Physicists once thought of the vacuum, what lies between stars, between atoms, between the smallest fragments of matter, as a kind of silent room too, a stage upon which particles and forces perform their dance, but which itself remained bare and motionless, empty, passive, waiting. But modern physics has shown that this stage is far from empty. The vacuum seethes with activity. It trembles with invisible ripples, sparks, and fluctuations. Even in the absence of matter, even at the lowest possible energy state, space itself is restless. To get a sense of this, imagine looking at the surface of a perfectly calm lake. To the naked eye, it appears smooth and unmoving. But dive beneath the surface, and you'll find currents swirling, eddies shifting, molecules colliding in ceaseless motion. Stillness, when magnified, reveals activity. Emptiness, when examined deeply enough, reveals fullness. This is what quantum mechanics tells us about the vacuum. At the smallest scales, the vacuum is alive with fleeting appearances and disappearances. Particles flicker into being, only to vanish again in less than an instant. They are called virtual particles, though the word virtual is misleading, because while they cannot be directly observed in the usual sense, their effects are measurable. They alter the forces between particles. They shift the energy levels of atoms. They even give rise to phenomena like the Casimir effect, where two metal plates placed close together in a vacuum experience a strange force pulling them together, not from any visible cause, but from the subtle fluctuations of the quantum field between them. The vacuum, then, is not empty at all. It is a shimmering ocean of potential, ceaselessly restless, forever dancing on the edge of being and non-being. But how can this be? How can nothing give rise to anything at all, even briefly? Here, we encounter one of the strangest principles of quantum theory, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. It tells us that there are limits to what can be precisely known. You can never know both the position and momentum of a particle with infinite precision. The tighter you grip one, the more the other slips away. The same applies to energy and time. Over very short intervals, energy is allowed to borrow against time's uncertainty. It can appear as if from nowhere, as long as it vanishes quickly enough to escape notice. Like a person taking a breath in a quiet room and holding it just long enough that no one hears. The vacuum borrows energy, creates a fleeting particle, and then returns the balance before the universe notices the loan. It is as though reality itself is unwilling or unable to remain perfectly still. The rules of quantum physics ensure that even nothing must fluctuate. Let us try a thought experiment. Imagine walking into a vast library at night. The shelves are lined with books, but every page is blank. At first glance, it seems like a library of nothing. But as you walk through the aisles, you notice a peculiar phenomenon. For the briefest of moments, faint words appear on the pages, sentences that form and then vanish before you can finish reading them. A story begins to write itself, then disappears. Another begins, then collapses into blankness again. That library is the vacuum. Its pages are never truly blank. They are alive with stories that flicker into existence, only to fade away. And from this restless sea of almost stories, perhaps, one full narrative once emerged and refused to vanish. Perhaps our universe is the book that lingered. Imagine, for a moment, that you are standing at the edge of a vast casino. But this is no ordinary casino. It has no glittering lights, no music, no sound of rolling dice or clinking coins. It is utterly silent, and the games here are invisible. The dealer is not a person, but the very laws of physics. The players are not gamblers, but fluctuations of energy. And the rules of the game are unlike any you've ever known. Sometimes the dice appear, roll themselves, and vanish before your eyes can register their numbers. Sometimes the coins flip, shimmer in the air, and dissolve before they land. This is the casino of the quantum vacuum. It is a place where chance is not only allowed but required, where uncertainty is not a bug in the system, but the system itself. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle whispers its strange permission here. Energy can be borrowed, but only for a time. The shorter the time, the larger the borrowing can be. The longer the time, the smaller the loan. Nature, it seems, has a peculiar way of balancing its books. Think of it like a breath. If you hold your breath for only a second, no one will notice. If you hold it for 10 seconds, perhaps a friend will glance at you with curiosity. If you hold it for a full minute, the silence around you begins to feel different, noticeable, strained, undeniable. The vacuum does something similar. It holds its breath, borrowing energy from nothingness itself, and uses that borrowed energy to create a fleeting particle. The particle lingers only long enough to be consistent with the rules, and then it vanishes. The breath is released. The ledger is balanced. Nothingness returns, only to shimmer with the next fluctuation. And yet, with every roll of this invisible dice, with every flicker of appearance and disappearance, there lies the faintest possibility of persistence. Here we must slow down, for the idea is subtle. If the dice are rolled infinitely often, what are the chances that one outcome, however improbable, might last a little longer than expected? What are the chances that one fluctuation might stretch, expand, and resist its return to nothing? It's as though you are watching foam rise on the surface of boiling water. Bubbles swell, tremble, and pop. Over and over, they emerge and vanish. But what if, just once, a bubble refused to pop? What if it grew larger, spread wider, and eventually became the whole pot? Some physicists suggest that this is how our universe began. A fluctuation, born of nothing, stretched beyond its allotted moment. It inflated, expanded, and did not collapse back into the sea of quantum foam. Instead, it became the stage upon which galaxies, stars, planets, and lives would one day appear. But let's return for a moment to the paradox, because it is not enough to say simply, a fluctuation appeared. We must ask, a fluctuation of what? If there was nothing, how could even a fluctuation exist? Here, philosophy leans in quietly. Perhaps nothing is not the smooth, absolute absence we imagine. Perhaps nothing is itself unstable, unwilling to remain in perfect silence. To exist as nothing is to teeter on the edge of something. To hold stillness so absolute is to create the conditions where restlessness becomes inevitable. Imagine you are trying to balance on one foot, perfectly motionless. For a few seconds, you can succeed, but the longer you hold the pose, the more you notice small tremors, tiny corrections, micro-movements. Perfect stillness is impossible. To hold nothing is to invite movement. So too with the vacuum. The very attempt to remain nothing creates the conditions for fluctuation. Nothingness cannot hold itself forever. And so, chance enters, not as an intruder, but as an inseparable companion. The cosmic dice never stop rolling. Most of the time, the fluctuations vanish too quickly to matter. But once, just once, one fluctuation lingered. It stretched, blossomed, and became the reality we now inhabit. When we gaze into the night sky, when we see galaxies scattered like jewels across black velvet, when we trace the faint afterglow of the Big Bang in the cosmic microwave background, we are looking at the consequences of a dice roll. We are witnessing the persistence of a fluctuation that refused to die. But here's the paradox that deepens the mystery. The dice themselves are part of the fluctuation. The game itself, the casino, the rules, the chance, are not outside of nothing. They are woven into it, which means that when we say the universe came from nothing, we must also admit that nothing was never entirely empty. It was always a restless, shimmering, trembling stage. It was always alive with the possibility of something. Pause for a moment and imagine absolute silence. Not the silence of a quiet room, where you still hear the faint hum of electricity or the rustle of your own breath. Not even the silence of a cave, where the absence of external sound makes you aware of your heartbeat. No, imagine a silence so total, so absolute, that it erases even the possibility of sound. A silence that does not merely lack noise, but lacks the space in which noise could travel. That is the kind of silence we often associate with nothing. A void so empty that it has no quality, no duration, no trace of disturbance. But here lies the paradox. Silence itself is already a kind of presence. To notice silence is to witness something, the stillness, the contrast, the absence. True nothingness, if it could exist, would not even be silence. It would not even be the possibility of silence. And yet, when physicists peer into the fabric of the vacuum, they do not find this imagined stillness. They find restlessness, movement, fluctuation. It is as though the attempt to imagine nothing inevitably brings us back to something. Non-existence refuses to be purely itself. Think of a still pond. On a perfectly calm day, the surface looks flat, like a mirror. But no pond remains perfectly flat forever. A breeze, a falling leaf, the ripple of an insect's wing will disturb it. To remain absolutely still is unnatural. Quantum nothingness is like that pond. Beneath the apparent calm, there's always jitter, always vibration, always a chance of disturbance. This jitter is sometimes called quantum foam, a frothing, seething underlayer of reality where particles blink in and out of being, where time and space themselves bubble and tremble. And here is where thought stretches almost beyond its limit. In this foam, each bubble could be a universe. Imagine looking closely at boiling water. Dozens, hundreds of bubbles rise, swell, and collapse. Most are tiny, fleeting, insignificant. But now imagine that one bubble grows and detaches. It floats away, drifting free, expanding larger than you can see. To the boiling water, it was only a passing bubble. But from the inside, to anything that might one day emerge there, it is everything. It is a universe. Some cosmologists suggest this is what happened to our cosmos. A fluctuation in the foam, small, random, unremarkable, expanded and never collapsed. It stretched into a universe, giving rise to space, time, stars, and life. And if that is true, then perhaps our universe is not unique. Perhaps countless other bubbles, invisible to us, have swelled and vanished, or swelled and expanded beyond our horizon. We are not the only roll of the dice, not the only bubble to escape collapse, not the only spark to flare from the sea of quantum foam. But let's return to the paradox, because it deepens here. If the foam always seethes, if fluctuations are inevitable, then can we truly call it nothing? When we say, the universe came from nothing, are we using nothing as a placeholder for something we cannot yet define? Perhaps the word hides our ignorance. Perhaps nothing is not the barren emptiness we imagine, but a fertile void, pregnant with possibility, vibrating with potential. It is like standing before a blank canvas. To the casual glance, the canvas looks empty, but to the artist, it is alive with potential images. It contains, hidden within its blankness, every painting that could ever be painted. The nothingness of the canvas is not barren, it is infinite. So too with the vacuum. It is not nothing in the ordinary sense, but rather the womb of everything. Its fluctuations, brief and fragile as they seem, are the sparks from which whole universes can ignite. And here the mind stumbles again. Because if quantum foam is eternal, if bubbles of existence constantly rise and fall within it, then perhaps nothing is an illusion. Perhaps there was never a time when there was truly nothing. Perhaps there has always been foam, always been fluctuation, always been possibility. This leads to a haunting thought. If nothing cannot hold itself, if nothing always trembles into something, then maybe nothing has never existed at all. What we call nothing may simply be the lowest layer of something, a substrate so subtle we mistake it for absence, when in truth it is presence of the most delicate kind. Imagine peeling away layers of an onion. Each time you remove a layer, you think, perhaps beneath this is the core, the true nothing. But each time, there is another layer. What if, no matter how deep you go, you never reach emptiness? What if nothing is always just another layer of something, waiting to surprise us? And if that is the case, then the great paradox of the Big Bang shifts. We no longer ask, how did something come from nothing? Instead, we ask, how deep does something go? How subtle can reality become before our minds insist on calling it nothing? The cosmic foam, bubbling with possibility, whispers back, nothing is never truly nothing. Let us return, once more, to the question that has haunted this entire journey. What is nothing? At first glance, it seems like the simplest of all concepts. After all, children grasp it in play. What's in your hand? You ask, and the child says, nothing, opening their empty palm. We understand the word, we use it daily. Yet when pressed, when asked to define it in its purest form, the concept begins to dissolve. For what is an empty palm? It is still skin, still warmth, still the possibility of touch. What is an empty room? It still has air, walls, gravity, and the possibility of echo. Even when we imagine empty space, what physics calls a vacuum, we now know it is not truly barren. It hums with energy. It flickers with fleeting particles. It trembles with possibility. Nothingness, it seems, is never quite nothing. And here we confront a startling thought. Perhaps true emptiness is not possible. Perhaps nothing cannot exist, not even for an instant. Why? Because nothing is unstable. Think of a ball balanced perfectly on the tip of a needle. It is a position of exquisite precision. In theory, it could remain there forever, unmoving, unchanged. But in practice, the slightest disturbance, wind, vibration, the tremor of the earth, sends it tumbling. The balance is too perfect to hold. So too with nothingness. It is the most delicate balance of all. No space, no time, no particles, no laws, no possibility. And yet the very act of being nothing seems impossible to sustain. The balance tips. A fluctuation appears. A spark ignites. In this view, the Big Bang was not an accident that interrupted nothingness. It was the inevitable unraveling of a state that could never last. Non-existence is fragile. Existence is resilient. If this is true, then perhaps our universe is not a miracle, but the natural consequence of the fact that nothing cannot hold itself together. But what does this mean for us? For you, sitting quietly, listening or reading these words, aware of your breath, aware of your thoughts? It means that your existence is not only permitted by the universe, it is demanded by it. The same instability that gave rise to space and stars and galaxies is at work in you. The universe refuses to stay empty. It insists on flowering into being, and you are part of that flowering. You might imagine yourself as a ripple on the surface of a great pond. For a moment you rise, you shimmer, you reflect the sunlight, and then you fade back into stillness. But the pond itself never ceases. Its surface is never perfectly flat. The ripples are inevitable. You are inevitable. And perhaps this is why the question of nothing haunts us so deeply. It is not just a question about the beginning of the cosmos. It is a question about the ground of our own being. We sense, intuitively, that nothingness should be simpler, more natural, more absolute. And yet here we are, thinking, breathing, loving, doubting. The fact of existence demands an answer. but the answer keeps slipping from our grasp. So we turn to metaphors. We imagine the void as a dark ocean, restless beneath the surface. We imagine the vacuum as a frothing foam, forever bubbling with potential. We imagine fluctuations like sparks in the dark, each one capable of becoming a universe. But perhaps the deepest lesson is this: nothing is not empty. Nothing is fertile. Nothing is creative. This is the paradox. The void is not barren, but abundant. The silence is not absence, but the womb of all sound. The blank canvas is not dead, but pregnant with every possible masterpiece. And so we are left with a thought both unsettling and comforting. Maybe there never was a nothing for the Big Bang to emerge from. Maybe there has always been a trembling, a fluctuation, a seed of possibility. Maybe nothing is just another name we give to the layers of reality we have not yet learned to see. If that is so, then the universe is not a story of something arising from nothing. It is the story of something unfolding from ever deeper layers of something, an endless cascade of being, a dance that has no first step. And we, brief as our lives may seem, are part of that dance. We are ripples in the great foam, bubbles rising from the unseen depths, notes in the eternal song that silence itself cannot contain. Nothing never was. Nothing never could be. There's only ever been this, the restless, shimmering, mysterious presence of existence. And perhaps, in the stillness of your own mind, in the quiet between thoughts, you can feel it. The hum beneath the silence, the something within the nothing, the dance that never began because it has always been. Imagine sitting on a beach, watching the tide roll in. The waves rise, crest, and fall, one after another, in an endless procession. You could count them. You could measure the seconds between them. You could even try to predict when the next wave will arrive. This is time as we normally experience it, an orderly sequence of moments, each one flowing into the next. But now imagine something stranger. Imagine the very first wave. Not the first wave you noticed, but the first wave that ever was. Can you picture it? A shoreline where no water has ever touched the sand, until suddenly, one day, the very first wave breaks. The mind resists this picture. Waves are always part of an ongoing rhythm. A first wave feels impossible. If there is one, surely there was one before it. And if there was one before that, then there was one even earlier. The sequence seems infinite. And yet, when we ask about the Big Bang, we face the same paradox. We want to know what came before. What was happening before space expanded, before time began to tick, before the first instant? The instinct to ask this is natural. Our lives are built on before and after. Breakfast comes before lunch. Childhood comes before adulthood. Even the thought you are having right now came before the next one you will have. The fabric of our experience is woven from the thread of time. So, of course, we want to trace it back. We want to pull on the thread until we find the knot where it all begins. But physics whispers a disquieting truth. That knot may not exist. According to Einstein's theory of relativity, time is not an independent river, flowing past the events of the universe. Time is part of the fabric of the universe itself. It is woven together with space into what physicists call spacetime. And if spacetime itself had a beginning, then asking what came before may be as nonsensical as asking, what's north of the North Pole? The North Pole is not simply a point with something further beyond it. It is the end of north. Go one step further, and you are no longer moving north at all. You are moving south. Similarly, if time itself had a beginning, then before may simply not exist. It is not that there was something before and we cannot see it. It is that before itself dissolves at the boundary. This is not an easy thought to hold in the mind. Our language struggles with it. Our intuition resists it. But slowly, if we sit with it, a kind of stillness emerges. Picture the Big Bang not as an explosion within time, but as the birth of time itself, the first tick of the cosmic clock, the moment when the very concept of moments came into being. There was no earlier. There was no waiting void, counting down until the spark ignited. Time itself began here. And yet, even as physics suggests this, our imagination does not rest. We keep reaching. We keep asking. But what about before that? What about the hidden cause, the secret background, the mystery beyond the boundary? This longing itself is worth reflecting on. Why are we so insistent? Why does the mind recoil at the thought of a true beginning, a first instant without a before? Perhaps because the human mind is a creature of stories. We expect every event to have a setting, every note to have a silence before it, every beginning to have its own beginning. But here we stand, at the threshold of the greatest mystery, and the story seems to dissolve. The very grammar of cause and effect, of before and after, may no longer apply. And this brings us to a deeper meditation. What if time is not fundamental? What if time is not the bedrock of reality, but something emergent, like the ripples on the surface of a pond, or the waves on that ocean shore? In that case, to ask what came before the Big Bang might be like asking what came before ripples in a pond. The answer is not another ripple, but rather the stillness of the pond itself. Perhaps before time there was something timeless, not another moment, but a state beyond moments altogether. The mind strains here, because it wants to treat timelessness as if it were just a very long time. But timelessness is not infinite duration. It is the absence of duration. It is not endless waiting. It is no waiting at all. Sit with that for a moment. Let your thoughts slow. Let your breathing soften. Imagine, if you can, a reality without before, without after, without sequence. Not a long silence, but the absence of silence. Not a long darkness, but the absence of darkness. A presence so profound that it cannot be measured by clocks, cannot be divided into moments. Perhaps it is from this stillness, this timeless depth, that time itself blossomed into being. And if so, then the Big Bang is not just the birth of the universe, it is the birth of story itself. The first chapter, the first sentence, the first word. Close your eyes for a moment and recall a memory. Perhaps the last time you walked outside on a cool evening, the air crisp against your skin, the faint smell of dust or leaves, the sound of your footsteps soft against the ground. In that instant, your mind was fully there. And yet now, it appears as a memory, a picture in your mind. Now think of tomorrow, a moment that has not yet come. You might imagine waking, sunlight filtering through the window, the quiet hum of the day beginning. That too appears in your mind, though it is not yet real. And then there is this moment, the present, the one you are in right now. Hearing these words, feeling the weight of your own body, the gentle rhythm of your breath, past, future, and present. Our minds arrange them into a neat line. We imagine time as a river flowing from source to mouth, carrying us steadily along. The past is upstream, the future is downstream, and we drift in the present, caught between them. But what if this picture is an illusion? Einstein's theory of relativity delivered a profound shock to our understanding of time. It tells us that time does not flow in the same way for everyone. A person moving very fast or sitting deep within a gravitational well will experience time differently than you do. Seconds for one observer may not match seconds for another. And more unsettling still, in relativity, all of time exists together. The past, the present, and the future are not separate compartments, but part of a single four-dimensional structure. Space-time. To borrow Einstein's own phrase, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. This is a statement that deserves to be sat with slowly. If the flow of time is an illusion, then the universe may not be a story unfolding, but a tapestry already woven. Every moment, every heartbeat you have ever felt, Every star that has ever burned, every thought that will ever pass through your mind, exists equally, stitched into the fabric of space-time. So when we ask, what came before the Big Bang? We may be leaning on the wrong picture. The Big Bang might not be a first event in a flowing sequence, but simply the edge of the tapestry, the boundary where space-time itself thins, where the fabric ends. To make sense of this, imagine walking through a great library. You wander past shelves stacked with books. Each book is complete, with a first page and a last page. Some are short, some are long. Some are stories of love, others of war, some of simple daily life. But none of the books are still being written. They already are. Now, imagine the book of the universe. It too has its first page, the Big Bang. But this does not mean there was an unwritten page before it. The story begins there, because that is where the book begins. To ask about before is like asking what page lies before page 1. Yet, even as physics leans toward this view, our human experience resists it. We feel the flow of time. We feel the tug of memory and the pull of anticipation. It seems undeniable that something is moving forward, carrying us along. Perhaps this tension, the tension between lived experience and cosmic truth, is part of the mystery itself. Maybe both are true in their own way. Imagine again sitting in that great library. You hold a book in your hands. For you, the story unfolds page by page. You cannot read chapter 10 before chapter 2. The plot reveals itself in sequence, and the characters do not yet know their own endings. But from above, from the perspective of the library, the whole story already exists. Every page, every word, every ending is there, fixed and complete. Perhaps our lives are like this. To us, time flows. To the universe, all is present. If this is so, then the question, what was before the Big Bang, takes on a new flavor. It is not a question about sequence, but about the structure of the book itself. The Big Bang is the first page, but perhaps there are other books on other shelves, universes with different beginnings, different endings, different flows of time altogether. This is speculation, of course, but speculation that arises naturally when we release the grip of our ordinary assumptions. For now, let us rest with the possibility that time is not what it seems, that the Big Bang was not simply the first moment, but the beginning of the framework that allows moments to exist at all. And if time is an illusion, then before may not be a direction we can travel. It may be a concept that melts away at the edges, like mist dissolving in the morning sun. We have rested in the thought that time may be an illusion, a tapestry already woven. But human curiosity refuses to stop there. If the Big Bang is the beginning of our cosmic book, then one wonders, might there be other books? Might our first page not be an absolute beginning, but only a beginning relative to us? This is where alternative visions of time enter. The cyclic universe, time as a circle. Imagine walking in a vast desert. You walk for days, always in what you believe to be a straight line. The sun rises and sets, the stars spin slowly above you, and you believe you are moving ever forward. But then, one morning, you stumble upon your own footprints in the sand. The shock is immediate. The path you thought stretched into infinity was, in truth, a circle. This is the vision of the cyclic universe. Instead of a single beginning and a single end, the universe may expand, collapse, and then begin again. A great breathing of reality. Expansion, contraction, birth, death. Again and again, without a final start, without a final finish. Hindu cosmology, for instance, speaks of kalpas, immense cycles of creation and destruction. The universe is born from Brahma, lives through countless ages, and then dissolves back into formlessness, only to arise once more. Modern physics has its echoes of this vision. Theories of the Big Bounce suggest that the universe did not emerge from absolute nothingness, but from the collapse of a prior universe. Our Big Bang may be one phase in an endless cosmic heartbeat. If so, then before the Big Bang was simply another universe. Not ours, perhaps. Not with our galaxies, our stars, our fragile human lives. But a cosmos nevertheless, with its own beginning, middle, and end. The eternal return, Nietzsche's thought experiment. Consider a more intimate vision. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once posed a haunting thought experiment. What if your life were to repeat itself, exactly as it is, endlessly? Every joy, every sorrow, every trivial detail, returning eternally in the same order. This was not meant as a scientific theory, but as a provocation. To imagine time not as a river, but as a wheel that turns endlessly, carrying us through the same patterns again and again. Physics offers variations of this idea too. In some models, the universe's cycles may not be identical, but could carry traces of the past into the next loop, like faint echoes across eternities. Perhaps the arrangement of galaxies, the constants of nature, even the possibility of life. These might shift, like subtle variations in a melody, though the rhythm repeats. The multiverse of time. Now imagine something even stranger. Not a circle, not a line, but a branching tree. At every fork, a new timeline. At every possibility, a new universe. This is the multiverse picture, a cosmos where, before the Big Bang, could mean another universe branching off, perhaps with its own laws of physics, its own geometry of time. In this view, our universe's beginning is not singular, but one blossom in a vast cosmic garden. Each universe may have its own clock, its own definition of before and after. Ours has a Big Bang. Another might have no beginning at all, but exist in a steady, eternal state. Another might flicker in and out, like a spark leaping from a fire. If this is so, then our questions about before may be too narrow. The Big Bang may be a local event, a regional beginning, one chapter in an infinite library where other chapters begin and end without our knowledge. The strange loop, time folding back on itself. And then there are visions where time is not linear, circular, or branching, but folded. Imagine taking a strip of paper. You draw a line along it, from one end to the other. That is your timeline, beginning to end. But now twist the strip once, and join the ends together. You have made a Mobius strip. Walk along it, and you will find there is no clear beginning, no clear end, and only one continuous surface. Some physicists entertain the possibility that time itself may have such a structure. Perhaps the universe's timeline is not a straight path, but a loop with a twist, one where the end folds into the beginning, and the question, what came before, is answered by what is yet to come. In such a picture, the Big Bang may not be the start, but the return, a seam in the fabric where the loop closes, reflections in the human heart. When we pause with these visions, cyclic time, eternal return, multiverse branches, Mobius loops, we might feel dizzy. Our minds, accustomed to thinking of beginnings and endings, struggle with pictures where there may be neither. And yet, these ideas resonate in us. For don't our own lives sometimes feel cyclic? The rising and setting of the sun, the seasons repeating, generations following generations. We are born, we live, we die, and new life takes our place. In this, the universe's cyclic visions feel not alien, but intimate. It may be that when we ask, what was before the Big Bang? We are also asking, what is the pattern of being itself? Do we live in a single story, from cover to cover? Or are we caught in an endless rhythm, a great wheel of recurrence? And so, with this thought, we move toward the final segment of this chapter. There, we will reflect not on physics alone, but on meaning. What it does to the human spirit to live in a universe that may have no before, or countless befores. We have wandered across many landscapes of possibility. Time as a circle, time as a loop, Time is a branching tree. Time is an illusion. Each of these visions whispers an answer to the question, what was before the Big Bang? And yet, none settle it completely. This is the paradox we must carry. Perhaps one of the most human paradoxes of all. We long for a single answer, a firm foundation. And yet, the deeper we search, the more we encounter horizons, not walls. The limits of before. Consider the word itself, before. It is such a simple word, woven into the fabric of our language, our thinking, our very sense of existence. We use it daily. Breakfast comes before lunch. Birth comes before death. A thought comes before a word. But this word only has meaning inside a temporal framework. It presumes a timeline already in place. To ask, what came before time began, is like asking, what lies north of the North Pole? It is a question that twists itself into paradox. And yet, in that paradox, something profound is revealed. Our thinking is bound to time, even when we try to think beyond it. The still point of mystery. Imagine sailing across an endless ocean. You follow the stars, the winds, the swells of the sea. And then, suddenly, the compass no longer points. The stars above fade. The horizon disappears. You find yourself in a place where the very tools of navigation no longer work. This is what it is like to reach the edge of our questions about before the Big Bang. Physics can carry us far. Mathematics can propose bold models. Philosophy can stretch our minds into loops, cycles, and branches. But there comes a point where our compass fails, where the categories of before and after no longer apply. And yet, this is not a dead end. It is a still point, a place of wonder, a silence where the mind can rest and the heart can open. Meaning in a timeless universe. What does it mean for us, fragile beings of flesh and thought, to live in a universe where before may not exist? Perhaps it teaches humility. We see that our categories, our words, our tools, are not the measure of reality itself. We are participants in the cosmos, not its rulers. Perhaps it teaches presence. If time itself had a beginning, or if it cycles endlessly, or folds in upon itself, then still, what we truly touch is this moment, the now, the heartbeat, the breath, the quiet act of being. And perhaps it teaches wonder. For to live in a universe where questions reach beyond our grasp is not despair, but gift. A reminder that mystery is not something to be solved once and for all, but something to dwell in. Echoes across traditions. It is striking how many human traditions, separated by continents and centuries, have intuited something similar. Buddhist thought speaks of the timeless present, where clinging to before and after is the root of suffering. Christian mystics speak of God as existing outside of time, the eternal now, in which all moments are gathered. Indigenous philosophies often speak of time as cyclical, woven with the seasons, where beginnings and endings are interlaced. It seems that wherever human beings gaze long enough into the depths, whether through meditation, prayer, or science, they encounter this horizon where time itself falters, and at that horizon, they find awe. Returning to the question, so what was before the Big Bang? We may say, nothing, because time itself began there. We may say, another universe, in an endless cycle. We may say, a multiverse, in which our before is another's after. We may say, the question is ill-formed, like asking for a place beyond place. Each answer is provisional. Each carries its own poetry, its own terror, its own quiet beauty. But perhaps the real gift of the question is not the answer, but the turning of our minds toward the mystery. To let ourselves dwell in wonder, to rest in paradox, to feel the vastness that surrounds our fragile lives. The quiet invitation. And so, let us leave this chapter not with a conclusion, but with an invitation. Tonight, or tomorrow, step outside beneath the sky. Watch the stars. Feel the turning of the earth. Let the thought come to you. Every atom in your body, every breath you take, every heartbeat carries the echo of that beginning we call the Big Bang. And yet, what lies beyond? Let that question rest in you, not to be solved, not to be closed, but to be lived. For to live in a universe where time itself may have no before is to live in a universe of infinite wonder. What does it mean to say that the universe emerged from nothing? At first glance, the word feels simple, almost obvious. Nothing in absence. A void. A blank page untouched. A silence before the first note of a song. But when we lean into it, when we try to picture it with the full weight of imagination, something strange happens. Our minds resist. We cannot quite hold nothing in our hands. Even when we try, we fill the silence with images. A black screen, an empty desert, a still dark sky. And yet, each of these is something. Darkness is not nothing. An empty desert still has sand, still has wind. Even the void of deep space is full of quantum whispers. It is as if the human mind, built for a world of things, cannot fully wrap itself around the absence of things. The illusion of absolute nothingness. Philosophers have wrestled with this for millennia. Can absolute nothingness truly exist? The Greek thinker Parmenides, more than 2,000 years ago, argued that it could not. He declared, "Nothing cannot be." To speak of nothing is already to make it something. To think it is to give it a kind of existence. Centuries later, Augustine wondered what God was doing before creation, and his answer was that before made no sense without creation itself. Time and being are woven together. There is no time without something to measure. In modern philosophy, thinkers like Martin Heidegger return to this puzzle, calling the question, why is there something rather than nothing? The most fundamental of all. And in science, the same difficulty appears. When physicists speak of the universe coming from nothing, they often mean not absolute nothingness, but rather a kind of fertile void, a state without classical matter, yet still buzzing with potential. This difference matters deeply. Absolute nothingness, if it exists, is sterile. It holds no possibility, no spark. But the nothing of physics, the quantum vacuum, the trembling field, may not be nothing at all. It may be a seedbed, a thought experiment, the empty stage. Imagine a theater stage after the performance has ended. The actors have gone home. The lights are dim. The curtain hangs still. To the casual observer, it seems empty. Nothing is happening. But look closer. The stage is not barren. It is pregnant with possibility. Every prop stored backstage, every costume hung on the rack, every script waiting in the wings could be brought forth again. The emptiness is not the end of the play, but its pause. This is one way physicists imagine the void. It may appear silent, but beneath the surface, there are rules, structures, potentials, waiting, humming, and in certain conditions, these potentials may erupt into being. In quantum field theory, even empty space is alive with fluctuations, particles appearing and vanishing, like bubbles in a restless sea. This sea of nothing is not absence, but possibility, the seedbed of being. When we say the universe might have come from nothing, perhaps what we mean is that it came from this restless, fertile void, a state in which the very laws of physics were poised to allow creation. In this view, nothing is less like an erased chalkboard and more like a seed waiting beneath the soil. To the eye, it seems lifeless, but hidden within is the potential for growth, for unfolding, for worlds to blossom. Perhaps this is why so many creation myths across cultures do not begin with absolute nothingness, but with a formless chaos, a primal ocean, a cosmic egg. These are not things in the ordinary sense, but they are not sheer emptiness either. They are states of waiting, seeds of being, the paradox of the fertile void. But here we encounter another paradox. If the void itself is pregnant with potential, is it really nothing? Or is it already something? Physicists sometimes argue over language here. Some prefer to say the universe emerged from a quantum vacuum, not nothing. Others embrace the word nothing, but redefine it, stretching its meaning beyond the common tongue. Philosophers push back, noting that once you grant possibility, you are no longer speaking of nothing. And yet, perhaps this is part of the mystery. What we call nothing may not be a final absence, but rather a hidden fullness. A fullness so subtle, so beyond our grasp, that to us it feels like nothing. The invitation of nothingness. Let us pause here and sit with the thought. Imagine nothing, not darkness, not emptiness, not a void you can picture, just nothing. Then, from this nothing, imagine the faintest tremor, a whisper of possibility, a seed of being stirring where no being should be. This seed unfolds, blossoms, erupts into space, into time, into light. From that seed, galaxies spin, stars ignite, worlds form, and you, sitting here now, come into being. The question then is not only, how could something come from nothing, but also, is nothing ever truly nothing? Or is it always, in some deep and hidden way, the beginning of everything? If we step more carefully into the scientific realm, we begin to see that nothing in physics is not the barren emptiness we imagine in philosophy. It is structured, it has rules, it has behaviors, and this structure of nothingness may hold the secret of how something could arise at all. The quantum vacuum, a sea beneath stillness. Physicists speak of the quantum vacuum. At first glance, the phrase seems contradictory. How can a vacuum, an emptiness, be quantum, alive with uncertainty and energy? But in the framework of quantum field theory, the vacuum is not mere absence. Instead, it is the lowest possible state of a field, a ground state. Imagine a violin string resting after being plucked. It looks still, but even then, it holds tension, potential, resonance. In the same way, the quantum vacuum is restless. Even when stripped of all matter and radiation, it cannot be entirely still. Energy flickers within it. Tiny particle-antiparticle pairs appear and vanish in unimaginably brief intervals, like sparks in the dark. This is not speculation, it is measurable. The famous Casimir effect demonstrates it. Two uncharged metal plates placed very close together in a vacuum experience an attractive force, not because of any direct interaction, but because the vacuum itself pushes them. In the silence of nothing, there is pressure. This is one of the great revelations of modern physics. Emptiness is not empty. A thought experiment, the calm ocean. Imagine standing on the deck of a ship at night. The sea appears calm. No waves crash. The surface looks like glass. But as you listen closely, you begin to hear faint ripples against the hull. Beneath the surface, currents move. Tiny fish dart. The ocean is never truly still, even when it seems so. The quantum vacuum is like this. To the eye, it looks empty. But beneath, there are ripples, fluctuations, tiny bursts of energy that reveal the hidden life of the void. Vacuum energy and the fabric of space. This restless activity is not just a curiosity. It shapes reality itself. The vacuum's energy is thought to play a role in the expansion of the universe. Cosmologists speak of dark energy, the mysterious force driving the accelerating growth of space. Some suspect that this dark energy is nothing other than the energy of the vacuum itself, stretched across cosmic scales. If so, then nothingness is not only fertile, it is expansive. It does not merely permit creation, it drives it forward, pushing galaxies apart, sculpting the large-scale structure of the cosmos. Here the paradox deepens. The very emptiness of space may be the most powerful thing in the universe. Nothing as a quantum potential. Let us reflect for a moment. If the vacuum is alive with fluctuations, then perhaps nothing is best understood not as absence, but as potential, not the erasure of all being, but the hidden readiness for being. In this sense, nothing is like a blank canvas. To the untrained eye, the canvas is nothing, an empty surface. Yet to the artist, it is possibility incarnate. Every brushstroke is waiting to be called forth. Or perhaps nothing is like a pregnant pause in a piece of music, the silence between two notes. The silence is not meaningless. It gives shape to the melody. It is what allows the next note to be heard. The first tremor of creation. Physicists exploring the Big Bang often describe the origin as a quantum fluctuation. Out of the seething vacuum, an instability, a trembling, sparked a cascade that unfolded into space and time themselves. It is as if the universe was born from a hiccup in the fabric of nothingness. This is dizzying to contemplate, for it suggests that the deepest secret of creation is not a clash of titans or a divine decree, but a whisper in the void, a tiny quantum tremor that snowballed into stars, planets, and life. The mystery remains, and yet, even here, the mystery does not dissolve. For we must ask, why is there a quantum vacuum at all? Why should the rules of physics allow fluctuations? In other words, even if the universe blossomed from a fertile void, why was there a fertile void to begin with? Why not absolute nothing? Science gives us the mechanisms, but not the ultimate answer. It maps the unfolding, but not the ground from which unfolding itself arises. And so, we circle back to the same question, deeper each time. Meditation on nothing. Let us close this part with a meditation. Imagine nothing, not an empty stage, not a blank canvas, not even the dark silence of space. Nothing. Now imagine that even within this nothing, there is a subtle quiver, a trembling you cannot quite perceive. That trembling is not a thing, but a potential for things. And from that trembling, imagine a spark, space unfolding, time beginning, energy rushing outward. The paradox is complete. Nothing is not the opposite of something. Nothing is the soil in which something takes root. And so, the question lingers in the silence. If nothingness itself trembles with potential, what does that say about the nature of reality? This is where science and philosophy begin to entwine, like two rivers merging into one vast stream. The physicist speaks of vacuum energy, the philosopher speaks of potentiality, the mystic speaks of the fertile void. Different languages, yet all circling the same paradox, that the emptiest state is not truly empty. Ancient visions of the fertile void. Long before quantum theory, human cultures intuited the strange idea that creation might emerge not from fullness, but from emptiness. In ancient China, Taoist philosophers spoke of the Tao, the unnameable source of all things. The Tao gives rise to the 10,000 things, yet itself is formless, beyond grasp. Laozi wrote, "The Tao is like a bellows, empty, yet never exhausted. The more it moves, the more it yields." Here, emptiness is not deficiency. It is inexhaustible. It is the very wellspring of existence. In Indian philosophy, a similar idea is found in Sunyata, the Buddhist concept of emptiness. To the ordinary mind, emptiness may appear as nothingness, but to the awakened view, emptiness is the condition that allows all forms to arise and pass. Just as a mirror reflects without clinging, so emptiness holds all things without being bound by them. The Greeks, too, grappled with this paradox. The philosopher Anaximander spoke of the apeiron, the boundless, an indefinite source from which all things emerge. Aristotle puzzled over prime matter, a kind of pure potential that by itself was nothing, yet became everything once given form. Though separated by oceans and centuries, these traditions all gesture toward the same mystery, that creation may spring not from abundance, but from void. A modern echo, physics and the philosophers of old. What quantum field theory now describes with mathematics, the ancients grasped with metaphors. Both are attempts to articulate the ungraspable. When a physicist describes the quantum vacuum as full of fluctuations, it is not so different from a Taoist sage describing the Tao as inexhaustible, or a Buddhist monk speaking of sunyata as the womb of phenomena. The scientist sees fields vibrating, particles appearing and vanishing. The philosopher sees potential flowering into actuality. Both are gazing into the same darkness, attempting to map it with different tools. The seed metaphor. Perhaps the most fitting metaphor is that of a seed. A seed, when held in the hand, seems inert, almost like nothing. A tiny husk, dry, unremarkable. And yet within it lies the potential for forests, for ecosystems, for the buzzing of bees and the breathing of generations. The quantum vacuum is like this. At first glance, it is barren, but in truth, it carries within it the potential for universes. And just as a seed requires the right conditions, soil, water, warmth, to awaken, perhaps the quantum vacuum needed only the right tremor, the right fluctuation, to ignite the birth of time and space. Thought experiment, a silent garden. Close your eyes and imagine a vast, silent garden at night. No flowers bloom, no trees rise, no sound breaks the stillness. It seems empty, and yet beneath the soil, countless seeds lie hidden. Their shells hold coiled life, waiting. The silence is not barren, it is brimming with possibility. This, perhaps, is what nothing truly is, a soil of seeds invisible to the eye. Nothing is potential, not absence. If we adopt this view, then nothingness is not the end of being, but its beginning. It is not the opposite of something, but the potential for something. This reframes the central question. Instead of asking, how could something come from nothing? We might ask, what is the nature of the nothing that makes something possible? Such a shift turns bewilderment into reverence, for we realize that absence is not sterile, it is creative. Bridging science and philosophy. It is tempting to place science and philosophy on opposite ends of a spectrum, one rooted in equations, the other in metaphors. But when it comes to the question of nothingness, they seem to lean toward each other, like two seekers meeting at the same doorway. The physicist says, the vacuum is alive with fluctuations. The philosopher says, the void is the womb of being. The mystic says, the silence speaks. And in their different languages, we hear a harmony, the lingering puzzle. Yet the riddle persists. If the vacuum is fertile, then what gave rise to the vacuum itself? If nothing is full of seeds, then who planted them? We circle back again, deeper each time. And perhaps this endless circling is not a flaw, but a clue that the mystery of creation is not something to be solved once and for all, but something to be contemplated, like a koan, until it reshapes how we see reality. Meditation, listening to the seed of silence. Let us sit once more in reflection. Imagine yourself seated in a quiet field. The earth beneath you feels barren. The sky above is vast and starless. All seems empty, but as you rest there, you begin to sense a subtle pulse beneath the soil, a life you cannot see, but can almost feel. Seed stirring, not yet breaking the surface, but ready. This is nothingness, not a cold void, but a quiet soil where existence waits. And perhaps, in some primordial moment, one such seed stirred, and the universe blossomed. If we sit with this vision long enough, the vision of nothingness as fertile soil, something begins to shift. The question, why is there something rather than nothing, becomes less a demand for explanation and more a doorway into awe. For perhaps the answer is not a final statement, but an experience, the recognition that absence itself carries the promise of presence. The subtlety of the seed. Think again of a seed. Its surface is unremarkable. To the casual glance, it seems lifeless, even empty. But its power lies not in what it presently is, but in what it holds quietly within. In the same way, the vacuum of space, our so-called nothing, may hold within it all the laws of physics, all the constants of nature, all the harmonies that allow galaxies and minds to arise. The seed does not contain the tree in a literal sense. It contains the conditions for the tree to become. So too with the quantum vacuum. It does not contain universes as objects already formed. It contains the conditions by which universes can unfold. This subtle distinction transforms our question. Nothing is not an absence, but a condition, a possibility, the garden of universes. Now imagine this. What if the seed of nothingness does not give rise to just one universe, but countless? Some physicists propose the idea of the multiverse, a garden of universes, each sprouting from fluctuations in the fertile void. Each universe might have its own laws, its own dimensions, its own unfolding story. Some may be barren, some may blossom into richness. Ours is one flower in that boundless cosmic field, and yet the soil, the nothingness, is shared. It is the common womb from which all these possible realities emerge. This image of a cosmic garden is not meant to be taken literally, but as a way to stretch the imagination. It invites us to see our universe not as the only outcome, but as one of many ways nothingness can express itself. The paradox of full emptiness. We return, inevitably, to paradox. Nothing is empty, yet it is also full. It is barren, yet fertile. It is silence, yet it speaks. Language strains to capture this, because our words are built on opposites. We want nothing to be the opposite of something. But here, the opposites collapse into one another. Perhaps this is why mystics so often resorted to silence or poetry when approaching the void. A Zen master, when asked what the ultimate truth was, might simply raise a finger or remain quiet. The point was not to give an answer, but to awaken the questioner to the living paradox itself. Nothingness within ourselves. It is easy to think of this nothingness as a distant abstraction, far away in the birth of the cosmos, but we can find echoes of it here, within our own experience. Consider the silence between thoughts. For a moment, there is nothing, no image, no word, no narrative. And yet from that silence, the next thought arises. Or consider sleep. In deep, dreamless sleep, the mind dissolves into a kind of nothingness. And yet from that rest, the waking world re-emerges with freshness. Even the breath carries this rhythm. The inhale fills, the exhale empties. Between them, a pause. That pause is like a miniature void, a tiny stillness in which life renews itself. In this way, we are constantly living the paradox of nothing is seed. It is not just a cosmic truth, it is a human truth, the humility of not knowing. And so we circle back, as we always do, to the edge of mystery. Science may refine its equations, philosophy may sharpen its questions, spiritual traditions may offer metaphors and practices, but in the end, the heart of the matter resists capture. Nothingness, fertile and paradoxical, remains what it always was, a mystery too vast for certainty. And perhaps that is not a failure, but a gift. For in not knowing, we are invited to wonder. In not solving, we are invited to keep listening. The humility of not knowing is itself a kind of wisdom. It allows us to sit quietly with the paradox, without rushing to closure. Meditation, sitting with the seed of nothingness. Let us close this chapter as we have others in reflection. Imagine yourself sitting before a single seed. You hold it in your palm. Small, plain, almost nothing. You study it, and the more you look, the more you realize, within this seed is a forest unseen. Birds that have not yet sung, winds that have not yet blown through leaves, shadows that have not yet stretched across the ground, generations of life not yet lived. The seed does not show these things, and yet, somehow, they're already there, hidden in potential. Now imagine that the universe itself was once like this seed, a silence brimming with songs, a stillness brimming with movement, a nothing brimming with everything. Sit with that thought, as one would sit with a flame in the darkness, not to grasp it, not to explain it, but simply to witness its quiet radiance, the whisper beyond words. At last, we must fall silent, for every description, however careful, falls short. But perhaps that is fitting. For what better way to honor nothingness than with silence? Let us then leave this meditation with a whisper rather than a conclusion. A whisper that says, nothing is not nothing. Nothing is a seed. And from that seed, all that we are, and all that we can imagine, has blossomed. And so, after drifting through this vast sea of paradox, we arrive not at an answer, but at a feeling. The mystery of nothing remains. Perhaps it always will. Maybe that's the point, that in trying to imagine what cannot be imagined, we brush against the edges of what it means to be human, curious, restless, and always reaching for more. We asked, how could nothing give birth to everything? And the truth is, we may never know. But in the asking, we glimpse something else, that nothing may not be the barren void we fear, but the quiet soil in which possibility itself takes root. As we return now to the stillness of our own rooms, our own breath, our own thoughts, perhaps we carry a little of that mystery with us, like a seashell brought back from the shore, holding the faint echo of an ocean we cannot see. Thank you for wandering through this question with me tonight. If you found comfort in this slow meditation, I'd be grateful if you left a like, or maybe even subscribed, so this quiet corner of wonder can keep reaching others who are also searching for calm. For now, rest easy. Let your thoughts drift as they will, and perhaps, in the spaces between them, you'll catch a glimpse of that same nothingness we've been exploring, gentle, quiet, and full of possibility. Good night.